friends are synths.
One of my favourite music-related channels on YouTube is run by JHS Pedals. Not only do they feature their own creations on there, but they also primarily actually talk about techniques and releases from other manufacturers, which I think is pretty classy. All of this is done with a sense of humour and charisma that is so often sorely lacking from, well, guitarists. Anyway, JHS makes a bunch of cool things, and as a Scotsman I have to take this opportunity to say that I am especially tickled by the existence of their Kilt overdrive pedal. However, the main offering in the lineup, which has always really caught my interest, is the Color Box, specifically version 2. This is a really special studio grade preamp and tone shaping pedal, and the sharp-eyed amongst you might notice that colour is spelled with the correct British English form with the U, something that I believe is a clever wee nod to the origins of the legendary Neve mixing consoles on which this pedal is based. Now, the Color Box is incredibly versatile, and so when JHS asked if I wanted to try one out with my various weird and wonderful devices that I've collected over the years, I jumped at the chance. This particular version is a special 10th anniversary edition, which has got a distinct colour palette which is designed to match the original Neve consoles, and I genuinely think it looks superb. The Color Box itself feels solid. It is chunky in the sense that the enclosure seems to be a wee bit taller than most standard pedals you might find, but very minimally so, and this allows it to retain a fairly small footprint, which is obviously important for guitarists with crowded pedal boards, but also for those of us with limited desktop space. My studio, as you might be able to tell, is infamously chaotic, so this is something of a real blessing. In terms of connectivity, we have got a combination XLR/1/4" jack input on the right hand side, with a dedicated switch to select which one is in use at any point, as well as a 20 decibel pad switch which is tied to the XLR input, and this helps temper especially hot audio sources. There are separate outputs on the left hand side with both XLR and 1/4" jack, and the foot switch has got silent switching, and that whilst there is still a physical click when you engage or disengage it, it doesn't, or shouldn't at least, trigger a nasty audio pop when you turn it on or off. The XLR output behaves slightly differently depending on which input mode is selected, and this gives you a fair bit of flexibility to use the pedal more as an effect, or more like a traditional DI box. You can run both the XLR and 1/4" jack outputs in parallel, splitting the signal to send it simultaneously to different destinations, which is really handy whilst recording, but also when playing live. So for example, if you wanted to send one copy of the signal to an amplifier, and another copy to a mixing desk, or, you know, whatever else.
The problem is, how do we know what we desire? The problem is, how do we know what we desire?
Personally, the way that I have most commonly been using this particular feature is to run the XLR output directly into my audio interface, and then have the 1/4" jack output running through another effects chain like a reverb or delay or whatever, which means that I then have separate tracks available in Logic that I can mix to taste later on, one affected and one more dry, or at least one that's gone through the pedal on its own with no other added effects, if that makes sense. That does make sense. Both the inputs and the outputs of the Color Box are monophonic, in line with how console or mixer strips operate. The Color Box supports the safe pass-through of phantom power, meaning that if you want to use this in conjunction with your fancy condenser microphones, you can. It's important to understand though that you still need an interface or a source that provides phantom power, as the pedal itself doesn't generate this. All of this functionality is driven by a standard 9V DC power supply with a fairly low consumption, And this might not seem all that exciting as a feature or something worth talking about or noting, but it is actually pretty great because it means that you don't need any weirdo specific power supplies to run the thing. I've got an old Rusty Box preamp pedal that I use for my bass, and it requires a rather irritating 24 volt supply to operate, which has caused me all sorts of headaches in the past. The control set of the colour box is fairly straightforward, but also deceptively deep. There are two main gain modes to speak of, which are indicated by the high-low toggle switch. As you might expect, the former allows you to more easily achieve dirty, overdriven or distorted sounds, whereas the latter is more suitable for cleaner or lower gain style sounds. There are a selection of knobs that you can use to further adjust the gain stage, and specifically we've got a pre-vol control which acts as a kind of initial gain or drive. This then feeds into the next stage, which is controlled by the step knob. Step engages the 1073 style preamp circuits in series at increasing fixed intervals, steadily but rapidly amping up the gain to what is a fairly obscene degree. I believe the fifth step is equivalent to 39 decibels of gain or something like that, which is pretty wild. As you may expect, there is also a master volume on there, which lets you set the final output at an appropriate level, no matter how bonkers or distorted the signal gets along the way. Separately, there is a whole EQ section with 6 dedicated knobs to let you shape your tone. This includes treble, mid and bass controls with accompanying shift knobs, which let you select the corresponding frequency range that is being adjusted. If you turn either the treble, mid or bass knobs clockwise from the 12 noon position, these act as a boost, and if you turn them counterclockwise, they act as a cut to the relevant frequencies that you've selected. There is 17 decibels of boost or cut in either direction, and in practice this gives you quite a lot of scope for shifting and tweaking things to your heart's desire. Finally, there is a high-pass filter built in, which is fixed at a slope of something like 6 decibels per octave, whatever that means. And this can be turned on or off with a dedicated switch. From a synthesis perspective, this is not the most intense or interesting sounding of filters, and it isn't really intended to be. Ultimately, its purpose is to help you tame some of the lower end on instruments as required, and it can help you clean up your mix. It is more functional than musical, I would say, and I would think about it in those terms. Now, for all of their flaws and foibles, one thing that guitarists really understand is the importance of achieving great tone, as well as the impact that simple things like EQ and different preamp circuits have on that. However, utilising and abusing preamp circuits for this purpose is certainly not an alien concept for electronic musicians, and there is a long and proud history of producers that have discovered and conjured up the magic you get from pushing mixers like the Boss KM or BX series to their limits. Saturating your signal in this kind of manner can really bring out these beautiful harmonic overtones, especially with drums. And as somebody who's a real sucker for experimenting with those kinds of devices, I have a Boss KM6A in the background here, not deliberately, it just happens to be here. I can say with some confidence as a result that the colour box very much has a pretty unique fingerprint when it comes to the character it infuses. As the name suggests, the colour box really shines with its ability to impart and infuse character into signals, and it is a brilliant vehicle to achieve different sonic manipulations, allowing you, fatten up, bulk out, and generally enrich your sounds. Guitars, vocals, and synthesizers can all sound beautiful through this, and I really love what the colour box brings to analog synths like the OB6 in particular. Similarly, nothing quite beats an overdriven Rhodes-style piano sound, which the colour box is perfectly suited to help attain. Now, Colorbox can really bring out the tonal qualities of a signal with very subtle applications. However, you can also get some really crazy results when you crank things up to the max, something that I naturally like to do on a regular basis. At the higher gain stages, you get this wild, hard clipping, square wave style distortion which feels and sounds like you're completely blown out the circuit. The versatility of the Colorbox means that it can be really useful in the live environment as well as when recording, with subtle tweaks intended for production purposes, as well as more extreme sound design possibilities. And I personally like making use of this to achieve sonic variations with my synthesizers, as opposed to or instead of relying, solely on built-in filters, LFOs, or other similar modulation sources. I got the Colorbox primarily with the idea that I would be using it to crunch up my drum machines and thicken up my synthesizers, and it has been great for that. However, despite all of my wisecracks and smarmy remarks about guitarists in this video, I do have to admit that the very first instrument I ran through the Colorbox was my American Fender Stratocaster, and boy did it sound great. In fact, I have to say that I've enjoyed the results of using this direct input console style method so much that it has inspired me to write some actual guitar based songs for the first time in, well, a very long time indeed. One of the things that I like about this pedal is that it can really bring different instruments to life without necessarily radically altering the role in a composition. And any time recently that I've been recording something, I find myself going, I wonder what that would sound like through the Colorbox, whether that's vocals, samples, synthesizers, or even just as a final master bus warming style unit. It does feel like one of those tools that brings a wee bit of magical extra something to productions, and even if that is more of a creative choice than a strict technically measurable outcome, it's one that I'm pretty comfortable and happy with. There is no doubt that this pedal really shines especially brightly with more traditional instrumentation such as electric or acoustic guitars. However, it can do so much more than that, and after 10 years of production, it's pretty clear to see why the Colorbox as a concept has been so popular and why the list of well-known artists that use it is so long. It really is kind of something of a serious production tool, masquerading in a convenient pedal format, complete with all of the benefits and some of the downsides, I guess, that such a guise brings.
Set about to deal more effectively with truths disclosed by the acknowledgement of erroneous assumptions. And when anybody reader with confidence will think that I'm anything other than what I am.
This isn't going to be the type of thing that everybody will or should rush out to buy, but if you find yourself enchanted by devices like the analog heat from Electron, the boom from Auto Machines, or the wide variety of different types of saturation and character you can get from different recording mediums like tape, etc., then this might be worth taking a look at. The special edition is only available until the end of 2024, so if you really want to get that specific colourway, I would suggest acting quickly. Otherwise, the Colorbox should continue to be available after that in its standard white form. For now, thanks for watching, see you later.